Today we are going to be learning about how to estimate quotients with two-digit divisors. So this chapter we're starting to learn a little bit more about dividing, and today we're going to learn how to estimate using two different ways. We're going to estimate using rounding, which is something that you already have known how to do. And then the second way we're going to learn how to estimate is through finding compatible numbers. If you remember from last year a little bit, we did touch upon compatible numbers, but we will be using them a little bit more going forward in 5th grade. So let's first go over how to estimate using rounding. Now when you're estimating using rounding, it's the same rules for rounding that you use all the time. So find your place, look next door, 5 or greater, add one more, 4 or less, let it rest. So I am going to look at my first problem, which is 897 divided by 92. And I am going to round these numbers so that I can estimate to find my answer. So for 897, I found my place, which is going to be the 8 in the hundreds place. Look next door to the 9. I see it's 5 or greater, so I add one more. That brings 897 to 900. And then for 92, if I find my place and look next door, I see a 2. So 4 or less, let it rest. 92 turns into a 90. Now this problem looks awfully similar to problems we did in the last lesson, so it's much easier to find the answer. So let's find our basic fact, which we can do 90 divided by 9, which will give me 10, and I have 1 0 that we can cross out. So my answer is 10. Another way to check my answer to make sure it's correct as far as this one is to do 90 times 10. I know 9 times 1 is 9. There are 2 zeros. So I get back my original of 900. Let's look at number 2. So let's again continue to round and use the rules for rounding to find our answer. So for this one we have 6,327 divided by 74. So I'm going to round right here. So 6,327 rounded to the nearest hundred would be 6,300. And we're going to divide by 74, which I'm going to round to the nearest 10, and it will be 70. So let's find our answer. We have 63 divided by 7, which I know is 9. Cross out any zeros, and I have 1 leftover 0. So the answer is 90. Again, you could check that always by multiplying. 9 times 7 is 63. 2 zeros left over. So I know that my answer is correct. Finally, we have number 3, which is 118 divided by 37. I'm going to round 118 to the nearest 10. So my answer will be 120. And I'm going to round 37 also to the nearest 10. So that'll bring me to 40. Now first look at your basic facts of 12 divided by 4, which will give you 3. Cross out your zeros. I have no zeros left over for my answer. So that means my answer is just 3. And again, you could check by doing 40 times 3, and your answer is 120. So rounding to find your answers to division problems is something that might be a little easier because you have done it many times before. But I do want to show you how to use compatible numbers. Compatible numbers are similar to rounding, except there's really no rules when it comes to it. So compatible numbers are easy to work with, and they can really help you when you want to try to do mental math which is in your head. So let's just jump right in and look at number 1. And there's one thing I do want to mention is when you're doing compatible numbers, you need to have numbers that are close to the original numbers in the problem. And you'll see what I mean in a second. So let's see. For number 1, we have 159 divided by 75. Now I'm not going to round these, I'm going to use compatible numbers. Now what helps me the best when I'm finding compatible numbers is to start with the smaller number. So I'm just going to make that an even 80. I could have also made it a 70, but I'm going to make it an 80. Then I'm going to look here and think to myself, what number could I change this to make it easy to divide? Now one way I could do this is by thinking about my 8. If I skip count by 8s, I go 8, 16, 24, 32. Now I don't want to go too high, but I want to change this number into something that is easily divided by 8. So if I count by 8s, I have 8, 16. 16 is close to 15. So what if I changed my number to 160? 160 is close to 159, and 85 is also close to 159. So I could use those numbers as compatible numbers to find my estimated answer. Now I know that 16 divided by 8 is 2. If I cross out my zeros, my answer is just 2. Let's try another example. For number 2, we have 367 divided by 66. So again, I'm going to use compatible numbers, which are numbers that are close to the original numbers, to find my answer. So again, I find it easier to start with the smaller number, 66. I'm just going to change that to 60. Now, as you can see already, that breaks the rules of rounding. That's how compatible numbers are different. If I was to round this number, it would have changed to 70. But we're not going to round. We're just going to look for compatible numbers, numbers that we think might work to make it easier to divide in our head. Now I have to think to myself, I have a 6 here, and then I have 367, but the first two numbers, let's look at those here. So let's try to make this easy to divide by 6. If I skip count by 6's, I have 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36. So 36 is a multiple of 6, so that might be easy just to keep 36 as 36. So I might just keep it as 360. So 360 is close to 367, and then I have 60, which is close to 66. Now, as you can see, both of these broke the rules of rounding, like I mentioned before. If I was going to actually round, I would have had 370 divided by 70. Now, that would be way harder to do because if you look at your basic fact of 37 divided by 7, it doesn't work out. So that's another reason why compatible numbers might be an easier one to use than rounding. So let's go back. We have 360 divided by 60. So I'm going to look at my basic fact of 36 divided by 6. I know that's 6. Cross out my zeros, and my answer is just 6. Finally, let's look at the last one, number 3. We have 445 divided by 78. So let's see, I'm going to start with my smaller number, and I'm just going to bring it to 80. And I'm going to try to make 445 something I can divide by 80. So let's see, I know I have to use my 8, and I'm looking at the 44, so let's count by 8s until we find something close to 44. So we go 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48. So we have between 40 and 48. I think I'm going to choose 40. So if I choose 40, that means it's going to be 400 divided by 80. So again, these answers are pretty close. 400 is a little far away, but it's still relatively close. So I'm going to use my basic fact of 40 divided by 8, which is 5, and cross out, and my answer is just 5. I'm going to show you how compatible numbers can give you many different answers for this one. So I'm going to do another one for the same problem. So again, I'm going to look back at my 78 first, and this time I'm going to change it to 70. And now I'm going to look back at my 445, and I'm going to think to myself, let's count by 7s and see if I can find something close to 44. So we have 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. 42 is a little bit closer to my last one, which was 40. So it might be a better estimate. So I'm going to do 420, and then I'm going to divide to find my answer, my estimated answer. So I'm going to use my basic fact of 42 divided by 7, which is 6, and I'm going to cross out my zeros. There's no zeros left over, so my answer is just 6. So this right here is 2 separate ways that you can find compatible numbers for the same problem. So you might not always get the same answer that everyone else gets, but as long as you are finding numbers that are close to the original numbers in the problem, you're doing it correct. So this is how you can use rounding and compatible numbers to find the answers, or to find quotients with 2-digit dividers.